President Saul, not just for welcoming us to your country, but also for your leadership in global health. Finally, thank you to the Grand Challenges community. It's been a great pleasure working together and learning from you over the last 20 years. When I look back over the history of Grand Challenges, I see a lot to celebrate. The state of global health in 2003 was frankly terrible. 2 million people died of AIDS that year. 2.5 million more died of malaria and tuberculosis. And the R&D pipeline for all of those diseases and other infectious diseases were nearly empty. So huge numbers of deaths, but almost no money spent to save those lives. That inequitable, lopsided equation is what inspired the partners who created Grand Challenges. It was shocking and unjust, and we believed that something could be done about it. So Grand Challenges started with two goals. We wanted to spur advances that would lead to breakthroughs. We started with the list of 14 Grand Challenges, priorities like creating drugs that could cure latent TB. And we supported researchers in all of those areas. In a broad sense, the goal went way beyond the 14 challenges to really bringing a whole new level of energy to transforming health in low-income countries. We believed we could create a scientific community that would sustain R&D with the prioritization to helping the billions of people who'd been neglected. So Grand Challenges was initiated by our foundation, but over the years, a number of partners have come in, and there are now about a dozen Grand Challenge initiatives on 4 continents. Together, these partners have supported over 4,000 projects in almost 120 countries. Of course, these projects are high-risk projects. We would expect at least a 50% failure rate, but the payoff from the successes is so dramatic that this is the smartest investments in terms of improving the human condition that are being made anywhere. And we saw that many projects led to big breakthroughs that could result in literally millions of lives saved. Consider the work on tuberculosis. The first effort, led by Douglas Young of Imperial College, was to develop new drugs for latent TB. That work drove the creation of a consortium that we call the TB Drug Accelerator. It's a private-public partnership with 25 members that has done most of the work that leads to us now having a very robust TB drug pipeline. I'm optimistic that we'll have new TB drug regimens that we desperately need. Today's treatment is a 6-month course of 4 antibiotics with significant side effects. It's hard for patients to keep up with, and drug resistance is getting worse. But with next-generation drugs, we'll have shorter treatment, safer treatment, and more effective treatment. Another early Grand Challenge grant supported the idea of reducing mosquito populations to reduce disease transmission. The original idea of that project, which we now call Target Malaria, was to use homing endonuclease genes to drive a bias for male offspring so that it was inherited preferentially from generation to generation, gradually reducing mosquito populations. And that's as important today as it was then. In fact, with climate change and new urban adapted anophelines, you could say it's even more important. Malaria deaths are down by over 40% since the turn of the century. But the disease has killed 15 million people since then, and it continues to be a major, major health problem. That gene drive work initially went fairly slowly, but then by taking advantage of the advances with CRISPR-Cas9, which became available about 10 years ago, that work has accelerated. And so researchers have successfully tested gene drives on caged mosquito populations in both the UK and Italy. And now the work is shifting into the field to several malaria endemic countries where gene drives will be tested as we receive the regulatory approvals and strong local support. It's not surprising that new technologies like this need a lot of review. It's not surprising that people at first will be conservative about how this will work. It's new, it's never been tried, and yet the potential benefit is very, very dramatic. A few months ago, I spoke with Abdoulaye Diabate, who leads Target Malaria in Burkina Faso, about the careful work his team is doing to prove that these mosquitoes and gene drives are safe and to educate the population about them. They're giving people time and information and answering all their questions. And they're continuing those conversations with all the regulators around the continent. Because mosquitoes cross national boundaries, there'll have to be a regional dialogue to make sure the right plan is put together. And our foundation is very committed to supporting this process so that leaders of malaria endemic countries can make evidence-based decisions. The other area that was very exciting in the original Grand Challenges was focusing on nutrition. It included things like biofortified crops, and one of the grantees developed vitamin A-enriched golden rice. Of course, that focus on nutrition is very, very important. And as time has gone on, we've realized the importance of the microbiome. In fact, the basic funding about the microbiome came because of our desire to understand how to improve nutrition. We now know that these interventions, driven by measuring healthy microbiomes, will let us reduce malnutrition that affects about 1 in 4 children in the world. Solving malnutrition is incredibly beneficial, not only to prevent deaths, but to improve the lives of the survivors. We've evolved with grand challenges. We've gone on to tackle new areas, and gut health is one of the very prominent areas. All over the world, we have 150 million children whose growth is stunted. And we believe that there will be very low-cost interventions that will reduce stunting. For example, we've learned that the bacterium B. infantis is a building block of a healthy microbiome. It helps them digest the complex sugars in breast milk. But many babies born prematurely or underweight actually lack B. infantis. And this year, the WHO recommended the use of probiotics to restore B. infantis for vulnerable babies and jumpstart their healthy development. We have also learned the importance of improving nutrition of mothers during pregnancy. Multiple micronutrient supplements containing 15 essential vitamins and minerals are now replacing the iron folic acid tablets that mothers have been taking in their ANC visits for years. But we're going to go even beyond that. We're testing what we call MMS Plus. And the plus means that we're going to add a number of bioactive ingredients to reduce inflammation and improve nutrient absorption. I'm very hopeful that this work will unlock even more progress in reducing malnutrition. So we have a lot to celebrate about the impact of grand challenges, but we also get together every year to talk about how much more we need to do. AIDS, TB, and malaria still kill 2.5 million people every year. We've reduced the number of children who die under the age of 5 from 10 million to about 5 million. But 5 million is still 5 million too many. Overwhelmingly, these are preventable diseases. And so we need to keep challenging ourselves to innovate. One area of critical intervention that's done the most to reduce deaths is the area of vaccines. And our foundation has been very engaged, including in the creation of Gavi that funds vaccines so that they can get to all the children in the world. We're now rolling out through Gavi HPV vaccine, which has great duration and provides protection from cervical cancer. But other vaccines don't have that same duration. For example, the COVID vaccine starts to lose its effectiveness literally within months. And so it's still an innovation challenge. How do we make vaccines that ideally protect for an entire lifetime? So that's a challenge in front of us. With the microbiome, although we have some answers, we have even more questions. How do you drive the healthy microbiome development in infants? What mechanism does the microbiome play in infection, immune function, and even in brain development? And how do you affect the mother's gut microbiome to seed the infant's microbiome? We need to solve these fascinating mysteries to realize the potential of the microbiome and allow every child to achieve their full potential. This idea of brain development is a major focus. Our knowledge of what reduces brain development and what helps it, or how to intervene, is still very limited. For years, we used height, stunted growth, as a proxy for cognitive development. And now we realize that the two challenges are very different. And so we're moving to other tools, including neuroimaging, so we can look at the brain and understand what a healthy brain looks like in terms of connections and functions, and use that to determine how we improve brain health. And so solving these mysteries of cognitive development will open up new pathways for improving the well-being of hundreds of children. In short, there are plenty of scientific challenges to solve. And we need to move a lot faster. So despite all the progress in global health R&D in the past 20 years, we need to do even more in the next 20 years. Now, there are some very exciting developments that may accelerate our work. This is our first Grand Challenge event where artificial intelligence and the role it will play is a major topic. AI has the potential to accelerate R&D by giving us better understandings. And of course, even at this formative stage, we need to make sure that all countries, innovators in Africa and the entire globe get to participate, and that all countries benefit, not just the wealthy ones. One of the more exciting set of grants we've given recently was to 50 innovators in low and middle income countries who who are pioneering new AI approaches. Many of them are here today. I'm optimistic that these new ideas will fulfill the potential in many areas, whether it's discovery or health treatment or even agriculture or education. And of course, we have a session tomorrow that will focus in on how we drive that forward. Another key topic is how we make sure we have the right regulatory system. Of course, during COVID-19, many regulators, including the US FDA and WHO, were able to use emergency listings to get highly effective vaccines out to people very quickly. And those vaccines saved over 20 million lives. But that sense of urgency probably should be applied to things that aren't big threats in wealthy countries, like AIDS, TB, and malaria. The delays in these approval process can make a huge difference. Now, in no way am I saying we should short-circuit the important work on safety and efficacy, but some of the same techniques that were used in COVID can apply. Consider malaria. We have next-generation drug candidates in late-stage development, but we face increasing drug resistance. But because malaria, despite 250 million cases not being declared a public health emergency, we don't get the same expedited review for this work as happened during COVID. So without cutting corners, we need to look at these high impact interventions and make sure they get out as quickly as they can. We see that emergency authorization is often extremely important. And the context should include not just rich country health, but health in every country. So we need to look at additional regulatory pathways for these tools that will save millions of lives. Another way to accelerate our work is to have the right infrastructure. We believe that infrastructure, contributions to that, can come from all over the world, including here in Africa. To promote that goal, our foundation today is announcing $40 million in new grants to help scale up local mRNA vaccine manufacturing. One of our partners in this is the company Quantum, and it's built a very exciting breakthrough low-cost mRNA platform. It allows you to start at one level of volume, move up to another level, and yet make vaccines with incredible quality and very low cost. And that's probably the technology that'll be used in more and more health conditions over time and should be available on standby in case of a future pandemic. Some of our partners in Africa who will be taking this technology include Biovac in South Africa and IPD, which I was able to visit yesterday here in Senegal. Historically, vaccine factories had to be gigantic, and there were huge-scale economics involved. And we took advantage of that in order to get very cheap vaccines. But with the work Quantum has done, the idea now is that with the right design, you can still get cheap vaccines even with factories that have a much smaller footprint. And in fact, they're self-contained enough that the issues of quality are often much easier to tackle. There's a huge opportunity here to even go after more regional diseases like Lassa fever or some of the livestock diseases that would never be a priority for large vaccine companies, but may have incredible benefits. And so by getting rid of these infrastructure issues, we create an even stronger incentive to do the upstream development for new vaccines. One metric that I always look at very closely is the funding for global health R&D. And the message about the value of this is one that I'm sure the people who travel to this meeting already understand. But we need to get that message out to governments, politicians, philanthropists.